Last week, I did a beach shoot in Treasure Island, Laguna, and it was one of the best beach photography shoots I have done this year. But today, we're gonna be focusing on one photo in particular, and I'm gonna give you my full, from on-location photo, thought process and whatnot, to my full editing workflow here in the studio. So stick around, and this is gonna be a great video, so let's jump right in. What's up, y'all? It's Project Photography, back with the video, and today, last week I went to Treasure Island Beach in Laguna to shoot some incredible landscape photography. Did my POV video there, so if you haven't gotten a chance to watch it, please take a look up here and check it out. But I actually went there and shot some amazing photos, an amazing beach, great lighting, just an overall fantastic experience. But today I want to focus on one single photo that I felt stood out to the rest. And in this video, we're gonna actually walking through the entire process of me from on location to editing. So the first part of the video is me explaining how I got the composition that I wanted, why I got the composition, and what I did to actually get it. And then we're talking through the editing portion of things and how I edit it, the techniques I use, and my thought process going into actually editing the photos. Stick around, stay tuned, because this is gonna be a fantastic video. But first of all, let's jump into the POV photography side and how I actually capture this image. All right, y'all, let's get started with the POV aspect of it. And I'm really excited to talk about how I actually got this photo and my thought process behind actually taking it. So this beach was a little tough to navigate around. I mean, there's a ton of rocks, a lot of obstacles you had to overcome. And for me, this is kind of why I bring my hiking boots everywhere and not necessarily chanclas and slippers and whatnot that I would normally bring to a beach. But having those hiking boots is absolutely huge because you can really just walk over anything, not to worry about getting poked and so on. So what I'm doing here is extending my tripod legs out to the maximum length because we're not going to be shooting anything down low. I want to get a nice good angle from the top, and that's why we have the camera raised to its fullest height. I originally thought I wanted to shoot this in vertical orientation, but I really like the horizontal orientation here. And mainly because if you actually look at the image here, you're going to see that the landscape kind of moves in a horizontal fashion from right to left, especially when you're looking at the cliffside on the right. And I just felt like it would do it a lot more justice. And the reason why I initially thought, maybe a vertical orientation would be better is because we have the water sort of acting as a leading line, moving up from the bottom of the frame up. But in the end, I just felt like a horizontal orientation would have been much better. So that's what we're gonna go with here. And as you can see, there's these guys, parachutes and some sort of motor that's going by, and we're gonna wait for that to go out. Because what I'm actually thinking about when I'm shooting this photo is I don't wanna create a really long exposure. If we were doing an extremely long exposure, like a 1 minute exposure, those guys wouldn't be a problem. But I actually want to create more of a shorter exposure, more like a 1 second exposure. And the reason for that is because I feel like we're closer to the water. We want to capture a lot of that movement in the water. And that's what we see here with this image, right? We're getting a lot of nice movement in the water, but isolating the clouds up top. And I really think this comes out to be a fantastic image. There's a lot of dynamism in the photo. We see a lot of the curvature with the cliffside. And the composition that I was really trying to go for was really trying to showcase the cliffside moving from right to left, getting a lot of that curvature in the frame, but also having some nice dynamism with the water. And I think we're able to capture that here. And overall, I think this is a great composition. This isn't really something I had to think too much about on location, but the distinction for me was really moving from a 10-stop ND filter going to a 3-stop. So let's jump right in and talk about the editing workflow. I'm going to do it all from scratch, no editing was actually done to this, no presets and so on. We're gonna do a full editing tutorial walkthrough as to how I edited this photo. So let's jump right in and get right to the computer. All right, y'all, we are now in the studio, behind the scenes, behind the screen, and we're gonna be doing some editing here. This is full editing. I mean, I'm not gonna be shortcutting nothing. This is my entire thought process. I'm gonna be walking through it, kind of guiding you guys along as to why and how I do certain things when it comes to my process. But for the computer that I'm using an M1 Pro, 14-inch MacBook Pro. It's an incredible computer, and I'm also using an iPad Air as my second display because sidecar is a thing, and it's absolutely incredible. So let's jump right in. So first of all, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna grab my raw file, of course. And the first thing that I really wanna do when actually editing is I wanna make sure that the colors as well as the actual lighting is nice and even throughout the frame. So what we're doing here is actually raising up the exposure just slightly, and we're really gonna be bringing up these shadows. And because we use an ND filter, there's gonna be slight vignetting on the corners. We'll deal with that later. But we're bringing down the highlights, and my goal is to really make as even an exposure as possible. You can see up here in the histogram, we want everything to be a little more balanced. So when we're actually editing it and going through our full edit, we don't have to worry about making things nice and even. We can really dial in, edit things the way that we want to. Let's probably bring up the whites just a little bit, bringing down the blacks. The clarity tool I'm probably going to touch a little bit later. So what I'm doing here is I'm going the other way dehazing. I kind of talked about my POV segment about how I use a different editing technique. Usually when I edit, I go this way, but what I like to do, or what I was doing with this segment, I was actually going the other way with the dehazing slider because I really want to add a lot more natural light in, and I feel like dehazing, at least more like actually hazing, would create a little bit more of a natural light rather than just bringing out the exposure. I feel like it turns out really well. But with that, we're going to be increasing clarity because using the dehaze tool actually does, reduce a little bit of sharpness, and we bring up the vibrance a little bit. I can see that there's a little bit of color casting. I see it's probably leaning more towards the green tint, so we're going to bring in this pink up just a little bit, so probably around there. I think the warmth wise, probably bring it up slightly, and I'm actually really happy with this base. I think this is pretty even exposure. You can kind of see here, nothing's actually lost. If we take a look, well, some of the highlights are lost. We can bring that down just a little bit more. That's as low as it's going to go. Probably lost some highlight detail there, but it's not too big of a deal. So what I'm doing here is actually looking for dust. Now, for me, dust is definitely something that's most prominent when it comes to mirrorless cameras in particular. So for me, I'm going to remember -13 on the dehazing slider. But what we're going to do is actually dehaze this quite a bit. And the reason why is because it showcases a lot of the actual dust that appears in our photos. And I go here to the spot removal tool, which is this, and visualize spots. Now this is crucial. Helps me kind of see where the dust would be. And because we're shooting at f8, dust is going to be a lot more prominent than if you were shooting at f2.8, for example. I don't see any. What I mean by dust is these kind of little like circles in the actual photo that look a little bit too dark. And as you can see here, you can actually see one of the hang gliders in the back there. So we're just going to go ahead and remove that. Use the spot healing tool, and hopefully it does a good job. Yeah, as you can see there, you can't even tell that that was removed. So yeah, I think this looks good. I don't think there's any dust. So we're actually going to be moving on to the main editing portion. So I remember -13 for dehazing. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Nice and even exposure. And I really like this base I shot off with. Got rid of the main blemish there in the back. There's one. It's fine. We'll just do that. So what we're going to be doing is going to the masking. Now, this is really crucial for me and my landscape work. I always do select sky for landscape stuff. And the main reason for that is that the editing with the sky and editing with the foreground / the main subject matter is definitely going to be a lot different. So what we're doing is segmenting it. So we have a mask for the sky. What I like to do is duplicate invert mask so I can work on the opposite side. So working on the main foreground. What I'm going to be doing here is working with the main sky. And what I really want to be focusing on is kind of bringing out a lot of the colors in the sky. So we'll be increasing the contrast a little bit. Let's see if we can bring down those highlights a little more. I don't think we can. That's probably a lost cause. But for me, I'm not too worried here because I feel like there wasn't much detail to be had anyways. So bringing down, I'm going to bring up the whites really slightly. No, actually, we're going to leave the whites there. Bring down the blacks just a little bit. And add some clarity just to showcase off more of the sky. And do I really, let's see, let's try and go, let's go 5 for the dehazing. And what you can see here is that the sky brings out a lot more colors. I like how it looks. Let's go and hide that. So this is the difference that using a sky mask actually makes, because now we can edit the foreground individually from the sky. And I think it's gonna look really nice and even, because the way you edit the sky and the foreground are 2 completely different ways. So what are we doing here? Bringing up the exposure just a tad. Adding some contrast in here just to kind of bring us some more detail. Adding up the highlights, and the main reason why I want to add some highlights in here is because if you look at the water, I think this is a big focal point to me, and this is something I really want to bring out in the actual image. So we're bringing down the shadows just a tad. Whites to kind of come up a little bit, blacks down. We're going to increase the clarity here so we can get a little bit more pop from the image, especially the foreground. So let's see, how do we like this? I'm gonna keep it there at the dehaze slider. I kind of like it at -2. So this is kind of what, not really a final image looks like, but more of a worked with image. And what I kind of want to do here now is I'm gonna work with this right side. So I'm gonna brighten up a little. I feel like it's a little too dark, and you can kind of see why. I think because the sun was on the left-hand side, it definitely, you know, made the right hand side a lot darker because now we had to adjust our exposure based off of that. So we're just bringing up the shadows, and the reason I don't bring up the exposure is because then it's going to look a lot more obvious in terms of, we just changed an entire side of the photo. Changing the shadows is a lot more subtle, and it's going to do the job just fine, as you can see here. So I'm going to go back and kind of work with, I think I kind of want to work with the sky a little more. I feel like there's a little more that could be done. I feel like maybe bring up the exposure a bit just to kind of brighten it a little. I think that looks good. Let's see how I feel about adding some warmth in. I think adding some warmth in is a good idea here. Nothing too crazy. And the way I'm actually gonna color correct this, and by adding a lot more color to the photo, because I feel like there is a decent amount of color, and I think adding in that purple tint was a good move. But what I like to do is actually go to color grading so I can work on the individual highlights, midtones, and the shadows. So what I like to do is I bring up the saturation to 100. I kind of move around the hue to see what I feel like would be the best color to integrate into this photo. And I feel like hue 35 is a good one. So I'm going to kind of move it around, see what I like. I don't really want to overwhelm the image with this. What I'm trying to do is bring out some warmth in the image, add color subtly, not to change the image drastically, because I know a lot of people like to do that. But for me, I want to keep it nice and subtle. Remember guys, the main goal for me in this landscape, or just landscape photography in general, isn't to make the photo look any totally different than what it originally was. My goal is to enhance the photo, bring out the beauty that the earth already produces for us, and we're so grateful to have these beautiful landscapes to shoot. I don't really want to change it all too much. So this is very subtle like movements in terms of the colors. You can see there, if I'm changed the color grading from on to off, we see that some nice colors pop. I really like the kind of pastel colors here. I think it really fits. So as you can see here, I'm using saturation 6, 8, and the 3 for the color grading for the highlights, midtones, and shadows respectively. So I'm not going too crazy on the colors. I'm really liking these colors actually. I want to kind of showcase the technique I learned earlier from Andy Mumford. I think it's really fantastic. It's absolutely brilliant to kind of bring some light, artificial light onto your subject matter. So what we're going to be doing here is getting a radial tool from the masking section in Lightroom. We're replacing it where the sun is, at least to the end. So one of the endpoints is on the sun, one of the endpoints is on the subject matter we want to highlight and bring out. What we're doing is actually going to the dehazing slider and going the other way. And as you can see, it brings in a lot of natural light into the image, and I really love that. So if you look at that without it, it kind of looks just like a regular cliffside. But now if we bring in the dehazing slider, it kind of brings in this hazy effect. And we're going to add a little bit of temperature. So we're going to bring in some more warmth to that specific area of the photo. So I'm going probably there. And what you can see here, what this does, it actually brings out the subject matter. It's super subtle, but I think it does a great job at showcasing the subject matter at hand. If you look at it right there, and you look at it with the mask, it really just highlights the subject matter, the cliffside that I feel like is really important, the main focal point in this image. I think it does a fantastic job. So I'm actually pretty happy with this final image. I mean, it looks absolutely stunning. I mean, look at the colors. Look at the way the lighting looks. I think it's just an incredible image. There's nothing more I think I'd want to change. I mean, I think that's it. Actually, maybe I'll bring down the shadows just slightly on the cliffside, just to make it a little more dramatic, at least on the foreground. Yeah, that looks good. I just felt like there wasn't enough punch in terms of the shadows for the foreground and the cliffside. So this looks really good to me. I love the colors. I absolutely love the balance in the exposure. I'm kind of sad we lost a little bit of highlights here, but I don't think anyone's going to be too worried about that, to be quite honest with you. This is what it looked like before, and as you can see, it looked really dark. My goal was definitely to retain a lot of the highlight detail, but in the in the sky, but it kind of was a hard time with that. So we're able to bring up a lot of those shadows, bring up the foreground image, and I just really feel like this is a really fantastic photo. I'm absolutely in love with it. So anyways, guys, that is pretty much the end of the video. Let me know what you guys think about this editing that I did. It's really simple, to be quite honest, but I think separating the masking in terms of the sky and the foreground is absolutely huge for me. And to get this final image was a really, I thought it actually came out pretty well. So anyways, guys, that is pretty much the end of this video. If you enjoyed this video, please, please, please give it a like, because I really enjoy making these type of videos. My goal as a YouTuber, I suppose, and as a landscape photographer, is to share my experiences as a landscape photographer with you. Now, I'm not trying to do any tutorials because I'm not trying to tell you how to do your photography. What I'm trying to do is give you my experiences as a landscape photographer. You can take bits and pieces from it, integrate it into your own work, and hopefully come out with better photography. So anyways, guys, let me know what you think about this video down in the comment section down below. Please rate, comment, subscribe, and I will catch you guys in the next one.